All right, so this is Red Apple Education, September 2022 leadership panel. We do these quarterly where we get in front of dynamic education leaders, hear their stories, hear what they're doing that's working, and give you an opportunity to meet some people you might not otherwise have run into. Today, one of our panelists is Dr. Cortez from Dallas ISD. How are you, Dr. Cortez?
I am doing fine. Again, I'm gonna reiterate, I'm not quite there yet. I can't wait to get there. So give me to about May and it
Yeah,
should be official. And
almost Dr.
looking like,
Cortez
yeah,
then.
yes, the journey is underway. Hopefully in May we can wrap this journey up. But it has been a very interesting journey, to say the least. I know it's one that you've already taken, but
Yeah.
it has really, I guess, enabled me to really push beyond my uh, routine in terms of learning,
Yeah.
but at the same time to really embrace opportunities for new knowledge. And
Mhm.
so, we coined the phrase often that we're lifelong learners, and pursuit of the doctoral degree really makes you understand what that truly means in terms of lifelong learning. Because the bottom line is when it's all said and done, it will not stop. It
Yeah.
just propels you to continue to move forward and to take all of those skills and things that you've learned and be able to apply them in not only your professional life, but your personal life as well. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's been a fantastic journey. I've learned a lot along the way, and I'm excited for what the future holds.
What's your favorite new thing? Look, I know this isn't on our preset questions, but what is the aha moment you've had on your journey to getting that doctorate?
I think for me, the aha moment is that as much as you think you don't
Okay.
know.
Okay. Yes.
And so, all the years of educational practice or whatever, it kind of puts you in a position, it prepares you for this. But I guess, the tenacity and the diligence that you have to have while pursuing it,
Yeah.
uh, during at the same time where you're working full time and you're
Okay.
engaging your family full time,
Yeah.
it just really makes you realize that you have this capacity to do great things. And sometimes you don't necessarily tap into that until you're forced into tapping into that.
Ooh,
And for me, that has been the aha moment for me, is that I'm really capable of doing a lot of things simultaneously, even more so than I realized, in order to accomplish a goal that I've set.
that is beautiful. I remember because I just finished in like
Mhm.
2017, right? But I will tell you, we had this textbook. I think it might even be here in my home office. It is. So this one was called Reframing Organizations, right?
Mhm.
Literally, my biggest aha came from this course, whose professor I didn't even like. But the book itself was just a revelation in thinking about how systems work together. And
Mhm.
so when I was a classroom teacher, I remember being so frustrated because I was like, clearly, this is what we need to do to get the outcomes we need to get. Why can't we get there? And in
Mhm.
reframing the organizations, it talks about different lenses through which to look at an organization. So structures, right?
Yeah.
Which are my wheelhouse. There are structural things you can change, yes, but then there are also symbolic things. So some things don't change because they mean something to the people who are doing them, even if they don't necessarily make sense, right? And then where is power concentrated? It may not be with people who have titles. It could, in fact, be somebody else in the organization that's the actual decision maker. It was just
Mhm.
totally helped me to get further faster,
Yeah.
right? When
Yeah.
working with people to change something that they say they want to change. So I'm like, oh, it was just great. It's my favorite book. Everybody hated that course, but I loved it just for that book. The professor was super hard. Okay, so it was already hard, and she was just super hard. And he was just like, oh my God. Okay, so back to the questions I asked you. Thank you for that segue. What is your education origin story? Like, what brought you to education? You could do
You
a
know,
lot of things. Why did
it's,
you do
am-
this?
it's amazing, Dr. Turner. I actually fought becoming an educator for a couple of years. I didn't want to do it. I just did
Oh,
not want to do it. I prepared myself to do it, but I'm just like anybody else. You're coming out of college, you want to make some money, right? And it's just
yeah,
like, you're looking at the salaries and it's like,
yeah.
no, that's not gonna make it. That's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
I've invested too much time and effort into this. And when I came out, you know, my first year as a teacher, I made $18,000 a year, right? And
Woo, honey. Yeah.
yes. And so when you're looking at what you could possibly do and you're thinking about everything that you want to do and being a young man, I just fought it. So I actually didn't go off into teaching for about 2 years after I graduated from college. But I did learn that, pursuing money, pursuing all these other things, there was still a lack of fulfillment for me.
Yeah.
And so what I needed to do was to really engage in something that I felt like I could really make a lasting impact. And I realized that the pursuit of dollars and all of those types of things, that wasn't really getting it, right? And
Yeah.
so found myself, saying, okay, let's give this a shot. Maybe you'll actually like it. And of course, my mother's no longer with us, but it's one of the things that she really encouraged me to do. And I was like, no, mom, I'm not gonna do
He
that. No,
said,
mom, I'm not gonna do
no,
that.
not.
And she would always call me professor. And I'd be like, no, mom, I'm not gonna do that. But eventually I came to my senses. And I say came to my senses because ever since then, when I entered this realm of education, this field of education, it has just been a rewarding experience. And this is year 28 for me.
Congratulations.
And I have been able to really kind of go to levels that I didn't realize I could go to. But as I engaged it, I became that much more enamored by the fact that, if I position myself correctly, I can really make a long-term impact
Yeah.
on the lives of so many students. And so this is year 28, and I've had the opportunity to serve as a teacher, as a campus administrator. I actually had the opportunity to serve as, of course, an instructional specialist and coordinators, but also did a little research for about 3 years in higher education. And you come back full circle, and I entered the ranks of upper management, becoming a director, executive director, and now assistant superintendent. And it's been fantastic in terms of just really being able to uh, become an active stakeholder, right?
Yeah.
In ensuring that students have an access to quality educational opportunities. But that would have never happened had I not entertained the thought of saying, what can I do that I know will really be fulfilling for me and where I will have a lasting impact? And so right now, I am enjoying the ride. This journey has been fantastic. It has presented so many different opportunities for me, opportunities to engage, like-minded individuals, people who are really looking to make an impact. It's allowed me to transcend any type of cultural barriers.
Yes.
It's allowed me to really be able to add value, lasting value to this field of education. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that really keeps me grounded is to be where I am, to be rooted where I am, and to do the very best that I can do in the capacity that I find myself serving. And I'm an example of how opportunity will find you as
Come on.
long as
Come
you just
on. Yes.
continue to keep doing what you know is right to do and you stay true to your values, the opportunities will find you. So
I-
needless to say, I don't make $18,000 a year now. And
Hey,
so
all right
it's
now.
been rewarding financially as well. And it's because I've stayed the course. And so for anyone that's a new aspiring administrator,
Yeah.
looking to kind of break ground and to try to do some things in an administrative capacity, I would say, there needs to be a level of stick-to-itiveness, intestinal fortitude, and that regardless of what it looks like right now, that is probably not going to be the end result. If you just keep chugging along, the opportunities will present themselves and you'll find yourself in a position to where you can make that impact that you really want to make in terms of this educational community.
I appreciate that. And I love how you begin and end with this is what's important to me as a person, right? I think that for a person to be effective as an educator, you got to love it. You have to believe that you are contributing to a cause bigger than yourself, or you are
Mhm.
absolutely going to burn out of it, right? And so I think your journey, listen, I cannot tell you how many people I talk to who have not done you've had almost every level of experience in an
Yes.
education system and gone out and done higher education and come back.
Mhm.
And you were like, those opportunities came to me. I was just doing what I love to do. And these things showed up. I think sometimes, especially when you're trying to get out of the classroom or trying to advance as an administrator, you feel like, I got to chase this down or I got to chase that down. I like your stay focused and stay steady and you will get there. I once had an administrator tell me, and she was right because the same has been true for me. Every opportunity she ever had just fell into her lap.
Mhm.
She said, Kia, I was not looking for it. Every advance I've ever been offered, someone came to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing that? Was that what happened to you too?
In many occasions, you just never know when the opportunity is going to present itself. So I think you have to be prepared, but
Yeah,
I think that we're always constantly preparing ourselves.
yeah.
Again, as
If you're
long as
doing it right.
if we're doing it right, if we're focused on where we are,
Yeah,
and so I really do my best not to covet other things, right? And
yeah.
so not become envious and get wrapped up in jealousy and I wish I was this, I wish I was that. And
Agreed.
and I really try to just stay rooted and grounded in what I know I've been called to do.
Come
And
on,
that
come on.
allows me to really, I guess, be in a position where regardless of what happens, I know that I'm going to be good because I know the true intent behind what I'm doing. And if I stay true to that, it's going to be all good when it's all said and done. So,
And you're able to bloom where you're planted and really add value no matter where you're located.
mhm.
I love that. What would you say your greatest victory as an educator? So we going back. You in the classroom at this point, okay? What would your greatest victory, what would you say it was? And then what would you say was your greatest lesson? Tell us about classroom. Okay.
Well, really, I think the greatest victory in terms of the classroom is making it through year one
Hey,
as a classroom teacher, especially when it's something that you have a little trepidation or
yeah.
reservation about doing. But to make it through your first year as a classroom teacher, I think that's a victory in and of itself. But I would say it kind of transcends that. And I think the greatest victory is really rooted in a steadfast commitment to combat systemic inequities, right? And
Come
so
on. Yes.
as a special educator, and I've had an opportunity to, of course, in my role, kind of transcend special education and work in other areas of education. But as a special educator, it was very important to try to do whatever I could to kind of level the playing field for students with disabilities.
Yes.
And I think that has kind of spilled over into um, my ideology in terms of supporting students regardless of their ability levels,
Yes.
regardless of their origin, their race, their ethnicity. Um, all means all. And so really trying to focus on combating systemic inequities. And I think really developing an understanding of intersectionality
Yes.
and how intersectionality can be both empowering but at the same time oppressing.
Yeah.
And so there are advantages and disadvantages to this concept of this framework of intersectionality. But I think for me, the greatest victory is understanding there are so many intersections that students have to, I guess, cross um, throughout their educational journey. And so I kind of look at intersectionality as there are so many things that students are dealing with. For a student with a disability, it could be the disability itself, but it could also be socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
It can also be issues based on race, disenfranchisement. All of these types of things come into play in terms of providing supports and services for our students. And many of our students are coming from various backgrounds that, we can't even envision. We don't know what they're dealing with day in and day out. And I know there are some things that we're going to talk about as far as parental engagement, and I think that's key. But I think for me, the greatest victory has been, understanding the concept and the framework of intersectionality and really trying to combat systemic inequities. I think the greatest lesson that I've learned is to remain true to my genuine self.
Come on.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's one of those things, okay to have mentors, right? I have my mentors, I have people that have, seeded into my life, have really blessed me and given me a lot of tools of the trade. But the one thing that I think for me, the lesson that I've learned is to really try to make sure that I develop my own sense of leadership and my
Yeah.
leadership style and to hold true to that. And so while I am borrowing from my mentors and other leaders in the field, what is my unique skill set in terms of leadership and how do I employ that in leading others across the organization? And I think that has been the greatest lesson for me is to be my genuine self
Yeah.
and to lead with that intentionality, but at the same time, understanding that I might not do it exactly how my mentor did it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I need to do it in a way that I am able to have sustainability in terms of my leadership. So,
I love that you're authentically yourself and unapologetic. So sometimes in that authenticity, we shrink back, right? Like, this is just how I am. And I love that you're like, this is just who I am. And I need you to know that I'm bringing my full self to the work that
mhm.
I'm doing. Just a second. So we have Shelly Sanders who's joining us. I'm gonna start calling her Dr. Sanders too. Okay, like I'm calling you Dr. Cortez, but she's in Lee Summit, Missouri.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, in district office there. How are you doing, darling? We are literally just Dr. Cortez, Mr. Cortez, Miss Sanders, Mr. Cortez just shared his education origin story and how he came to the work. And then he was just talking about his greatest victory as an educator, really being just having survived that first year, where it was like, is this really gonna work? Am I actually gonna be able to do this? And I felt that in my spirit. Okay. And then he said his greatest lesson, which is the point you came in on, was, discovering that his voice had value as well. And that it doesn't matter how many people have great, ideas and intentions for you. You need to be okay with you and walk that person out authentically because it's connected to your purpose. You can't fully flow in purpose if you're being someone that you're really not. So we want to catch up with you. Tell us, how are
Morning.
you? How
I
are
am doing great, ready for a Chiefs win on Sunday. So, yes,
Woo-hoo! We're all hopeful and crossing our fingers at this point. It's been not as great as I thought it would be at this point.
no,
Anyway, they're struggling a little bit. They're gonna come around.
they'll be good.
I understand. Tell us, what has your greatest victory been as an educator, and what has been your greatest lesson? So we're going back to
So,
classroom Sanders
yeah,
now. Like,
yeah. Um, I would say maybe the theme that has transcended sort of being in the classroom, being a coach, being an administrator, and now I'm a district administrator. Are
these
the
sound
relationship
familiar, Cortez? She's done the same thing, all these different levels. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's the connection with students, right? I think to why I wanted to be a teacher in the first place. Like I knew in fifth grade, and it was because of kids. And so I think for me, that has been the theme. It has been a challenge with this shift to central office. How do you maintain those? How do you create those? How do you maintain those? And especially for me, starting in a new district where, so I was a building principal in one district and then coming to a new district in district leadership. How do you keep those connections to kids? So that probably is my why. It's something that I work really hard at. When days get really long with sometimes the political red tape, you always go back to kids. So that's my theme. That's my strand. It just looks different here, but it is still as important as it was when I was a classroom teacher.
So would your victory be managing to keep a connection with students at every level that you've held and kind of keeping them in sight no matter what?
Yeah, like keeping them the priority, right? Because oftentimes, you get in the weeds or the thick of it, and sometimes we can forget that it's about kids. It
Yeah,
impacts kids, right? Like we all got into this profession because we liked kids, we loved
yeah,
kids, not because we wanted to work with adults every day, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it's figuring out a way to keep that a part of what I do every day, what I believe in, sort of those core values. Because you can get, the further you get away from kids, it can happen. And I've seen it happen to amazing educators. It's just a part of it. So right now, that would be my victory, is that I'm figuring out a path to get it done, and to connect. I just came from one of our high schools. It's homecoming Friday, and yep, Tiger High. And I met with the kiddo that I created a really strong connection with last year, and was able to help her problem solve a situation that felt really big, but wasn't that big in the grand scheme. So how do we scale it back down? So that's what the work is about, right? We're all responsible for that.
I love that and I appreciate it. I would say something similar. I think if I were looking back on Kia, the classroom teacher, first of all, I was great. Okay. Just great. But I would say I felt like my greatest victory was when I started doing class within a class well, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about, where you have the two
Yep.
teachers and one is focused on the students with
Hmm.
IEPs and you're supposed to be team teaching. I was
Hmm.
terrible at that initially for a lot of reasons. Some were beyond my control.
Mhm.
But when I finally got a co-teacher where we hit a flow with
Hmm.
it was the best thing I felt like I could do for students who clearly had accommodation they were supposed to be receiving. I felt like I could competently,
Yeah.
provide that.
Mhm.
And I would say the greatest lesson for me, and I don't know if you all have had a similar experience, truthfully, I had two students who were seniors and couldn't read. Three. I've had three that came to me, all male, who were seniors, had IEPs, every one of them, could not read and were about to be graduated. And
Hmm.
so what I took away from that, because I mean, it's not like they just busted out like, hey, Miss Turner, we can't read. It was over the course of working with them they made it to my senior English class. I was like, you can't, they couldn't. They had managed to adapt and they had
Hmm.
had some other things happen where they had been supported in a way that didn't allow them to learn the skills they needed. Right.
Mhm.
And so, to me, that was my first inkling that I needed to step out of the classroom because I couldn't do anything about that from just my English class. Does that make sense? And that was the first time I thought bigger than just my classroom, is having two students in one class one year and a student who'd been in my class like 3 or 4 years before, and all of them could not,
Hmm.
were not ready to go into the world. But as a system, we graduated them, and just thinking there's got to be something else, that happens here. This isn't doing what we set out to do. So that is mine. Okay, I see you laughing, Cortez. What you thinking?
I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's one of those things that as you mature in life, you're able to be very reflective. And
Yeah.
so without the questions, I don't know if you actually reflect. And so I think as I was listening to Shelley, one of the things that I was reminded of, and I was talking about that victory was surviving the first year of being a teacher. And I remember I got like this spectacular evaluation. I mean, I was like, first year, I was like, I mean, I knew I was pretty good at it. I kind of had this jovial mindset and this attitude and interacting with the students and, really were able to engage in this and that. Well, like you, Shelley, I switched districts in my second year as a teacher because I relocated. And that second year, that evaluation was absolutely horrible. In my mind, I had some needs improvement and all these types of things. And so I didn't know what to do. As a matter of fact, and I didn't talk about this initially, Dr. Turner, because again, when you're having conversations and you reflect, I actually left the profession, the classroom for 1 year
Me too.
because I was so disappointed in my evaluation that I said, they are not paying me enough money for
Come
this.
on.
I know my skills, all of this, that principal is crazy, this and that.
Yeah.
So I went out there, started doing some nonprofit type stuff. I was really enjoying what I was doing.
Yeah.
But again, as I go back to what that calling is and what I'm really passionate about and how I would be fulfilled, I found myself back in the classroom. And I'm so glad I did that. And when I left the classroom again, of course, it was to do some research, and that was pretty much to hone my skills. But I just remember when you talk about your greatest victory, now that I think about it and I reflect, that probably is my greatest victory, is that even though I left, I was able to come back and get on this trajectory, which has propelled me to where I am now. But I don't know if that would have happened if I didn't go through that adversity. And so as I reflect on that, maybe that is actually the greatest victory, is that I didn't quit.
There you go.
I quit momentarily.
You took a gap year. You took a gap year.
Yeah, I took a gap year.
Literally, all three of us did the exact same thing. I did that same thing after my first year of teaching. Shelley took a break as well. And I hope that people hear that, like, you feeling burned out or over it or whatever is fine.
Mhm.
That does not mean you can't come back, and it doesn't mean it's forever. Sometimes you need a different experience to understand how you could have gone back and approached where you were in the first place. So much appreciated. Okay, I'm gonna keep us going. What are we missing in education in terms of, and I love this, is my favorite question, but what are we missing in terms of creating equitable and engaging environments for all families? Like, why? And I cannot tell you all, although you probably can guess, how often I hear we can't reach those families. They don't want to interact with us. We have a language barrier. These families, we're doing everything we can, they're not coming. What are we missing to create those engaging family environments? Why are we not getting in front of the parents we most want to see? Just in your opinion and experience, I know we all have different ones, but what are you thinking?
So I'll jump in here. I hear it all the time in education, and it burns me in a way now that I don't think it has in the past, and it's the saying of, well, this is how we've always done it.
Yes.
Right. And I think the reason we don't engage certain families is because we are so tethered to how we have always done it. What parent engagement looks like when I was in school, what parent, like, we are so stuck to that we are not putting ourselves in a space to re-image what engagement looks like, right? Because we are so tethered to what it was like when we were in school, when my kids were in school, now and so that is why, and to be very honest, I would say when we did all of those things back then, we weren't engaging those same parents or same families back then, right?
Thank you.
So I feel like this question sort of brings to light that maybe we have never engaged certain families. And as a system, we've been very okay with that, right?
Yep.
I think where we are moving into is that at some point, if we are going to turn the tide, we are going to have to reimagine what family engagement looks like for all families and provide multiple access points, not just the ones that benefit the school or the school system, right? So I don't know that I have an answer for what is missing or how do we get there. I will just push out that we have to reimagine this. And the only way to get it right is to talk to the people that we are not engaging.
There
They
you
will tell us exactly what they need in order to be engaged. But as long as we continue to create treatments, to create engagement with them without allowing their voice to be heard in the space, we'll get it wrong every time. So that's just my little 2 cents on
Listen,
that.
and I love that. Came out swinging. You said, and here's another thing to think about. I appreciate that because I think you're right. We have this vision of the good old days. Oh my God, I hear it so often, and it is my pet peeve. That, oh, I remember when, parents knew what to do and knew how to parent. And I'm like, friend, that is
They didn't know how to
absolutely
parent back
true.
then.
We were
Mhm.
not having these conversations publicly back then. That's the only difference, is that you was
Yeah.
keeping it in your house, but it was
Yeah.
still the same kind of thing going on. What do you think, Cortez? What you got?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very complex issue, and I'm glad we're having an opportunity to discuss it. I think really for me, I think the missing piece is connected to an inability to create effective wraparound services
Mm,
that are not just, as Shelley mentioned, I would say tethered to academic needs, but also focus on social emotional needs. And so across the country, there's a big push as far as social emotional learning, because I think school districts, educators have realized that if we're really going to be able to meet the academic needs of students, we have to address the social emotional needs that they are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And so I think that's really where the issue is really trying to create these wraparound services that not only emphasize academic aspects of education, but also promote the social competence and equity issues that students are facing day in and day out. And I agree with what Shelley said. I believe that we're having difficulty reaching parents because our communication system is one way. And
Mhm.
so we do a great job of disseminating information, but we don't do a great job of receiving information. And
yeah,
so we have to be able to foster two-way communication that allows our families to really tell us this is what we need so that we can create some optimal academic partnerships
yes.
that allow us to really engage families and students based on what their unique needs are. And so part of this is probably because of my career in special education for so many years, I realized the importance of personalized learning in individual education programs for students. But I think you have to go beyond just what those specific plan needs are and really look at where does the student come from and what is their environment outside of school. If we understand what that environment is like, maybe we can pivot some and really figure out effective ways to actually reach the families that these students are connected to and be able to really focus on what those needs are. But again, I think it begins with communication, moving from one-way communication to two-way communication, and really looking at our families as partners in this academic journey that the children are on.
Mhm.
You know what? I appreciate that. And I think I would say simply, remember, I didn't show you this, Shelley, but I was telling Gerard that this is the best book I had during my doctoral program, right? It was
Okay.
worth, the whole program was worth finding this book. And basically, it just gives you 4 different lenses through which to look at systems, right? So structures that are in place, people that are in place, symbols that the organization holds, and then where power is concentrated, right? And it just was revolutionary and changed my complete perspective and now the approach I take when working with school systems. Anyway, I think when we think about a question like, why are we, and I always say this to people, even though it doesn't necessarily land, but why are we not engaging families? I would say our mindset about them doesn't allow us to do that. So to your point, if we, to your point, Gerard, if we say we need to have better systems to receive communication from parents, I would argue that a lot of systems don't believe that parents have much worth communicating.
Mhm.
And that is evident in their practices, right? And I don't think it's a conscious thing. It's kind of what Shelley said, it's the way we've always done things. You've always dropped your kids off and trusted that we're the experts and educated them. COVID-19 homeschool taught all of us that we are really co-parenting these children to a degree. And so we need to work together, but we have never before had a relationship with families. And I can tell you time and again in various locations that there's this perception that families are otherized at school. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, that mom, and everybody has a that mom story. But for every one of those, how many are we missing of parents who are like doing everything they can to be involved and to show up? And we just don't have those on ramps, for them. And so I agree with you that we need more resources to support families, but those resources also need to be presented in a way that show families they have value. Like, we know that you know your child. We are going to come to you in your community, which almost never happens. We're going to come to you in your community. We're going to take your feedback and use it, which also almost never happens. We're going to make sure that we show up to the places that you show up. So I agree completely. I think that is why we're having difficulty, is that not only do we need a structural shift, I think in very many cases, we need a change in perspective. We need to humanize the families that we're serving instead of humanizing the students to a degree and then otherizing their parents, which is our problem, right?
Mhm.
Again, my opinion, friends, my opinion. So then for number 4, it's like, what systems level shift then, right? So we're thinking just about structures. Do we need to be more inclusive? So I talk to principals and I love them all the time who are like, I really want my families here, Kia. I really do want to do that. I'm going out in the parking lot and saying hi to people every day. I don't know what else, you know what I mean, I need to do. And you all's experience, what would like Kung Fu Panda, step 1, level 0, right? What's one shift they could make to create these more inclusive environments, even just at a building level? Or if you're thinking at a systems level too, because both of you are there now. You know what I mean? What's an easy shift that could be made there? I'll take either or.
Well, so it's interesting. I had an opportunity to, are you ladies familiar with Ms. Cent Marshall? She's the CEO of the Dallas Mavericks.
No,
and I had an opportunity to hear her keynote address.
Wow.
And one of the things that she pointed out, this was very powerful to me. She said that diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance.
I love that.
It's more than just being asked to the party, it's more than just access. I think we have to shift our understanding of what it means to be inclusive.
Yeah.
And inclusion is more than access, it's active participation. So if we're disseminating information, even if we're in the parking lot and we're telling parents this and that, and we're trying to engage them on that level, we still have to build in opportunities for them to actively participate in these engaging activities.
Yes.
Because if I just continue to invite you, you may come or you may not. And if you come, but I don't provide an opportunity for you to truly engage the activity or the work that we're trying to do, then you may be present, but not present.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so I think that's really what it is understanding that we're trying to create diverse, inclusive environments, but it's more than just saying, okay, we have this available for you, parent.
Yes.
It's really, we have this available to you, and this is how we want you to contribute to this process. And so making parents or allowing parents an opportunity to be actively involved in what it is that we're trying to do, I think that's where we have to make the shift, is to move from access to participation, but making sure that it is meaningful participation and really appeals to parents from diverse backgrounds, diverse scenarios, whatever it may be, but making sure that everybody has an opportunity if we're truly going to be inclusive.
I love that. What you got, Shelley? What you thinking?
Yeah, so I think I've been doing some work with Floyd Cobb and John Krahnapple in their text "Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity," and one thing they talk about is this idea, is belonging uncertainty, right? So when we come into a space and that space says yes, you belong or you should belong, right? That because there are situations and systems set in place, it can cause us to doubt whether we belong in that space, right? So for example, as a parent, so I am currently a parent and an employee in the same district. So as a parent, my kiddo goes to school, right? And there's a behavior issue. If I am then expected to walk into that space as a parent, right? Now my kid just acted a whole fool in school, and now these people think that my house, now I am dealing with belonging uncertainty. Do I belong in this space? Does my kiddo belong in this space? Are they going to perceive me this way? Can I show up in my true authentic self that I am just a parent trying to get by like we all are, right? So this idea that belonging uncertainty can create situations where parents will choose not to engage with us.
Yes.
Right? Because they don't want to be judged. Because right now, the way it's set up for many of our parents, it can feel as if belonging is conditional. You belong here as long as your kids behave, as long as they can read, as long as, all of these indicators, as long as they are the star athlete, all of these things. But what if your kiddo is not?
Yeah.
Right? What if your kiddo has this? What if you're like all of these things? So I do feel like sometimes our belonging is unconditional for parents based on indicators or identifiers of their children. I would say as a building principal, I had a staff, and myself included, we did not live in the neighborhood that we served, right? And maybe on the staff of about 50 had 4 or 5 staff members that did. And oftentimes what you'll see are like get on the bus tours where you load all your staff on the bus and you all bus driver drives you through the neighborhood and you look out the window at the kids and the people and you go, "Ooh, okay," right? Okay. It happens a lot, right? So we took a different spin on it, and our spin was we're going to get off the bus, and we're not going to get off the bus to look and to stare and to see. We're going to get off the bus and we're going to serve. Right. And so what happened we spent a day of our back to school training. And this was when I was a building principal. So you get a day and a half, essentially, in the district I was in. So we spent a full day. And during this time, we have families trying to enroll. Like we need enrollment paperwork. We need immunizations. All these things. So we loaded the bus up. My administrative assistant and our office manager loaded all of the registration paperwork up. Computers, hotspots, we put games, we coordinated with a couple of our larger apartment complexes, and we took the show on the road. So we got off the bus, we set up enrollment in the offices, we handed out backpacks, we got books in hands of kids, we played games, and there was flow. So, and then we packed up the bus and went to another site. And so essentially, and there were a couple of complexes where we didn't get like a space to locate, but when you pull a bus up into a neighborhood and you put all these teachers off the bus and you unload all your gear, guess what? Kids come, right? And staff was astonished at how many of our kiddos were at home alone, right, during the day, because this is during school day. And these are elementary babies. So they come out, and we get them backpacks, and the parents that are there will come out and do registration. But it was this idea that we are not we need to be a part of our community. Like if we don't live here, it is what it is. But like we're not staring down on them. We're gonna get into the work. And for many of our teachers, this is the first time they connected where kids live to the kids that are in their classrooms. And many of them were like, "Oh, it's not as bad as I thought." And I'm like, "What did you think it was?" Right?
Yeah.
Like, so I just, there is power in going out and entering that space. We're also very shocked at how open our families were, right? To receiving that, to come on in. We had families, our staff knocking on doors, leaving flyers, enrollment flyers, come up and get backpacks full of supplies. We have shoes and, all of this good stuff. Immunizations, just all of that. Like, how do we help? But we got to get off the bus, right?
I love that. You need to put that on a t-shirt. Just
Yeah,
get off
get off
the
the bus,
bus. Just get off the
right?
bus.
Just get off.
I really think that speaks to the missing piece, Shelley, because again, the active participation, but from the lens that you just allowed us to kind of look through, it is not just active participation on the part of our families, but immersing ourselves in the culture, in the community, and that garners a level of participation that just kind of goes well above and beyond probably what you could get even with the parent coming to the schoolhouse. And so really meeting the parents where they are. And I think it also allows us to become culturally sensitive as educators and to really kind of see again, when we are, and I talked about the wraparound services, when we're talking about, some of the academic requirements and things, state testing, all these types of things that we have to do. And that's important. But it's that social emotional piece, that social emotional competence, the things that students are dealing with day in and day out. You don't see that unless you go into the community. And so I appreciate you for pointing that out, because that really takes it to another level to where, yeah, I'm really going to develop an understanding and become much more culturally aware of our students. And then maybe if we develop that understanding, well, hopefully when we develop that awareness and understanding, then we will figure out, and this is the best methodology for us to utilize to have consistent engagement with our family. Thank you for bringing that to the surface.
I agree completely. And I think what I hear you saying is we need to be willing to get uncomfortable. So many times we expect parents to come and get uncomfortable in front of us. You come up here, especially don't let there be a language barrier, right? You come up here, you need to figure out, how to get the information that you want. You need to hope the person that you're talking to can help you. And, oftentimes there's not the support or even the warm welcome that you need, like you said, to dispel that belonging uncertainty, right? And so then you have parents who are like, I am not doing that again. That was super uncomfortable. And I always say this, like, we need to put ourselves in the parent's shoes. Why are we unwilling to get uncomfortable, but we're asking that of you? Why are we not willing to come to you? You have to always come to us. If we were dating, we would break up because we never get out of our own comfort zone, to come see you. We only talk to you when we want to. We don't want to talk, you don't want you to talk back to us, and we don't want to come see you either. And so when I always present it to people like that, like, if you were dating, okay, we are really not great, okay, in terms of partnership. And then people are like, I can see what you're saying. I said, so on the parent end, we're not great partners. So it's not necessarily that you have this glut of parents who just are checked out and there's nothing they can do. You have some, and that's a real thing. And we have resources, right? But the majority, we just are not partnering well with, in my opinion. So I appreciate both of you for highlighting that. I love that quote though, like, diversity is inviting you to the party and then inclusion is asking somebody to dance. I love that. And I love belonging uncertainty. Both of those are getting Googled after this. Okay, so then if you were giving one piece of advice to a new administrator, and either of you can take this, looking to build parent relationships, what would it be? So this person's new, y'all know the feeling, just got into the chair, and they are like, the thing that is on my radar is parent relationships. What would you say?
Provide numerous opportunities to garner input and elicit feedback on the engagement strategies. I mean, again, it goes back to whether or not it's going to be one-way communication or two-way communication. And, you know, effective communication is not one-sided. Effective communication involves both sides. And so I think, you know, for the new aspiring administrator is to make sure that you're coming up with these grandiose plans. But number one, you need to make sure that that's something that your community can get behind, your school community,
right.
your families, partners within the community, all of these people solicit feedback on your recommended or suggested engagement strategies. And I think within that, academic partnering has to be an essential component and a priority. Provide collaborative opportunities for families and teachers to collaborate in terms of this educational environment for these students. And so again, it goes back in my mind to a simple thought, and that's two-way communication that allows you to not only present information, but to receive information.
Yeah. What would you say to that, Shelley?
So what I would say is something I failed at miserably until I realized I needed to fix it. Oftentimes, if you're wanting to be an administrator, right, you're a problem solver, you're a fixer, you're gonna, right? So when you listen to respond, you listen to fix, right? And so my piece of advice would be when you are working with parents, and usually what'll happen is when you're working with parents as an administrator, it's in high stakes situation, right? There's always a lot of emotion. The stakes are high. Listen to understand and not to respond, right? Because oftentimes what happens, we'll sit in a space with parents and they are laying it all out, and we are about 4 steps ahead
we figured it out
brain about how we're going to solve this. And what we miss when we don't listen, right? We got this master plan and we get it wrong again because we did not listen to understand, right? And oftentimes when you're listening to understand, you're listening for what also is not being said.
Exactly.
Right? And so the biggest piece of advice I could give, and this goes for parents, students, staff, is to listen. You get so caught up in the day-to-day, and it is fast. It is bop, 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 that you forget to listen to understand and to broaden your perspective. So that would be my biggest advice in dealing with any stakeholder as a new administrator, is you have to figure out a way to slow your brain down, slow yourself down to listen to understand, not to solve problems.
I love that. I think mine would be to put your processes in place first. So if you are new and you are working on parent engagement, the first thing I want you to think of is when a parent comes in, what's your process, right? So that you don't get bombarded and blindsided, just like you said, by 3 different parents, you know what I mean, who are like this, and this. What is your process, starting from like the classroom to, you know, potentially AP to potentially you? What is the process for parents? And then give parents that process from the very beginning. I always think of it as giving them their cheat codes. So if your parent, like one I can think of having right now, is upset that their child is being denied an IEP evaluation, right? You ask for it, whoever you're asking is saying no. What is the process? What do you do? Tell them that you have the right to this. This is what you can do. You know what I mean? Pre-plan those scenarios so that parents already know how to come in. Like, okay, this is what I do, and that's clear for me. Or I don't like what my teacher did. This is what I do, and that process is clear for me to the extent that it can be.
And I think that is like, that's where we want to get. But I also think that if we are not strategic, we can put processes in place that become barriers. For example, in order to meet with me to express your concern, you need to make an appointment. And guess what?
Exactly.
I'm not available for 3 days. Okay. Right. Because I have things going on. As a building principal, and I don't do this now, but like my parents had my cell phone. I gave it out at kindergarten roundup. I would tell parents, pull your phones out and put this number in your phone. Because when push comes to shove, and like you sort of you get your trust when things get tough, right? Like that's when trust is built or broken, right? So to determine whether they're even going to play nice and come to your PTA meeting or your whatever you got going on. But when things get tough and emotions run high, I always wanted my parents to know that I would rather us deal with it in live time as much as we can than for you to stew all weekend or all night, and then you're meeting me at the door ready to exchange words that are disrespectful and all of the above. And now where do we go from there, right? And so but that was a very different form of communication than get with my administrative assistant, schedule an appointment, I will get back with you. That looks very different. And so I do think we have to be very strategic that if we put these processes in place, this is how you access, that we have to be open that having somebody schedule an appointment for 3 days may not be the most timely. That's not, so just being flexible in that approach and how we give parents access to us, right? Because that's their life they're sending to us. That's their best they're sending to us. And I'm sorry, if somebody told me I had to wait 3 days to talk about my best, my life, my baby, right? I may not be okay, right? And so that's just one thing that I always keep in mind and would, just stress to people, like be very careful about appointment setting and all that good stuff. It works where I work now. It did not work in the building setting to help people problem solve around their kiddos.
I love that. I agree. I mean more like sometimes I was thinking of a recent situation I just had with my oldest, and there was no path for disagreement, right?
Absolutely.
That's what I mean. So like she had this thing happen. It was clearly out of line. And you're right, I went complete mama bear and I emailed everybody, okay, professionally and in the name of the Lord. But I was like, just so we are clear, this is where you got me wrong, and this is what needs to happen. But it turned into that because there was no process to say, what do I do if I feel this person's being unfair to my child? Who do I even start talking to? And you're right, it's because it is the appointment thing. You need to call, find the receptionist, make the appointment. So I thought if I had just had a roadmap that says, this is what you do, and then this will happen at the end of it, it would have saved that. But I feel you. I think there's room for definitely what you're saying, just being very available. And it turned out after that email, that's exactly what happened. Administratively, they were like,
available.
Miss Turner,
let's meet.
What's going on with you? Let's talk. So
I would always tell parents, I'm probably not going to be able to solve it at 7 o'clock at night, right? Like teachers are off contract, but I can listen and I can start working on it first thing in the morning. And guess what you can do? Bring your baby to school. We'll sit down and figure it out.
First thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning. But the issue is, right, like I always tell parents, I don't want you losing sleep, because when you lose sleep and you show up on my front door, you are not in the right state of mind, right? Like we're not going to go very far with that. So it was just this, and I would tell other administrators I would do this, and they would say, well, oh my gosh, don't they like call you and misuse it? And I said,
people are really respectful. Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. I would say that I would tell people you should have called, but I didn't want to. Well, do you want to feel the way you feel now? No. So call. But I had zero parents misuse having that cell phone number and having that type of access. They were very respectful of it.
Yeah. Okay, last question to close us out. If anyone who hears this wants to get in touch with you, are your LinkedIn DMs open? Do they email you? Can they get in front of you? Can they just add you on LinkedIn? I always say LinkedIn because that's where we post this video, and because I always think of that's where, professionals run into professionals. Do they just search you under your name and you pop up?
Yeah, it'll pop up for me.
And you're open to having a conversation if anybody wants to have one.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the both of you. I knew this was going to be a good round. I knew it. I appreciate the both of you. I really admire the work that you're doing and the approach that you take to it, because it's not just about a position or title or money. It's more about impact. And that's the battery in my back, right? If it's not working, why are we doing it? And if we're not getting further down the road, we need to reconsider, how we're traversing this road. So thank you so much for that. I will send a copy of this to you both And we'll post probably snippets of it on LinkedIn at a later date.
Mhm.
Anybody listening, if you want to reach out, please reach out to Gerard G. Cortez on LinkedIn
Yeah.
and to Shelly Sanders on LinkedIn. Shelly is in Missouri, Gerard is in Texas. So please feel free to search them that way. It has been an incredible pleasure and an honor talking to both of you. Thank you very much.
Same here. And it's nice to be able to talk to folks from Missouri, you know, and you know what? I hope Kansas City does well because my homie went to
Okay.
Texas Tech where I went. So
Okay.
he went to my alma mater. So I do root for him. And he is a Texas boy at heart. You know what
You
I'm
know.
saying? So I actually hope they do very well. Y'all know I'm a diehard Cowboys fan now.
You know what? It comes with Texas. So
Yeah.
we get it. That is okay. Our whole family is in Texas, so I totally understand. It is fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Here's hoping the Chiefs win. Thank you both. Y'all
That'll
have
be
a-
great.
All
Go
right.
Chiefs.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.